going to get started. Welcome. Oh, let me see if I got this. Am I on? Okay. Welcome to the Board of Directors meeting for April 23rd, 2018. We have today a pretty full schedule, including a public hearing on the budget and some very important recognitions and just curriculum highlights, et cetera. So I am gonna get right into it. As we get closer to the public hearing, I'm gonna talk a little bit about how we're gonna handle that procedure, but for now, we're gonna just get going with the meeting. And so with that, I'm going to ask for an approval of minutes. Please just remember that the only people who can vote are those who actually attended that meeting. And so if anyone has had an opportunity to review the minutes of March 26th, 2018, would you please make a motion?
I'll make a motion that we approve the minutes of March 26, 2018 as presented.
Do I have a second?
Second.
All in favor? Could I have a motion, please, with respect to the minutes for April 2nd, 2018?
I move that we accept the minutes of April 2nd, 2018 as presented.
Second?
Second.
All in favor? Anyone opposed? Moving next, could I please have a motion for April 9th, 2018?
I'm on a roll. I'll motion that we
Bring
approve
it
the
home.
minutes of April 9th, 2018 as presented.
Great. Second?
Second.
Fantastic. All in favor? Anyone opposed? Thank you. So now actually is a great time that we all enjoy from the board, when, especially this particular time of year where we're doing budgets and looking forward to the next year. It's really exciting to be able to look back on the season before, and really with respect to this winter season in particular has been just an extraordinary testament to athletics at Greeley. And so with that, I'm going to ask Dave Shapiro, our athletic director, to go on up to the podium, and if you will just walk us through the recognitions for the various teams. And I'd also like to introduce Representative Dale Deno, who will be presenting legislative sentiments to the teams at the same time.
Excellent.
Thank you.
Well, thanks again for having us. Now that winter has finally ended today,
Okay.
we'll honor our winter teams here. And right now, our baseball team, last I knew, they were going to the 12th inning against Cape Elizabeth.
Wow.
What's that? 13th now? Thank you for the update. But that makes me think of an important point about, certainly we had a very successful winter season, and that's why we're here right now. We had 5 state champions among our teams. We had another team that was within one event of winning a state championship, and another one within one goal in overtime of winning another. So we had 7 of our winter teams not only in contention, but doing very, very well. So that's it's a testament to our student athletes who work really hard, and our excellent teammates and our coaches and the support that they have. And one of the things that I want to note that was really spectacular about the run, again, not just the success of the teams, but the way our community came together to support them. One instance in particular was we had a boys hockey game that would have been on a Wednesday night. Mother Nature didn't want us to play Wednesday night. We moved it to Tuesday afternoon at 4 o'clock in Lewiston, and we had almost 200 students there watching them. So they really rallied for each other, and that was really an awesome thing to see that. And then when we got to the pinnacle of our state championship games, just a full house in the Portland Civic Center. There weren't too many people home in Cumberland and North Yarmouth on those nights. So that was excellent support. So, and I think they earned that too from the way that they competed. So long story short, we had 5. And that is girls basketball, who's here tonight. Boys basketball has some representation here. Our track team, both boys and girls that won, and our girls ice hockey team. I do not see any girls ice hockey players or coaches here right now, but our boys and girls basketball teams are here right now. So why don't you all come on up? And Mr. Dillon, the floor is yours. Come on up. One big happy family. Come on up here together. You want them one at a time or everybody?
We're doing basketball first.
We have basketball right now. The girls are here
Bring them
first.
all.
Okay, the boys will follow. Many are home doing homework right now too, so that's,
Yeah, that's,
or at the baseball game. So the camera's over
Squeeze
here.
up, yeah, squeeze up over here. Thank you. Senator Breen was going to be here with me tonight and was unable to be here and really wants to pass along her best wishes as well. It is absolutely ridiculous how many championships we win, isn't it? I mean, I don't know. I doubt any school gets the number of championships that Greeley does. It's outrageous. We need a fire truck just for our teams. They're amazing. And as David also mentioned, it's a wonderful community thing. It's great that we do it. It pulls people together. It makes people throughout the community, whether you have kids in the school or don't have kids in the school, feel part of one big community. So it's a wonderful thing that they do. I'm going to read the sentiments for the basketball teams. Be it known to all, because we speak very formally, that we, the members of the Senate and House of Representatives, join in recognizing the Greeley High School girls basketball team and Greeley High School boys basketball team of Cumberland, which won the Class A state championship. We extend to all the members of the team our congratulations and best wishes, and be it ordered that this official expression of sentiment be sent forthwith on behalf of the 128th Legislature and the people of the state of Maine, and has a bunch of signatures. And this just really is, I know, a very small thing, and it's just a piece of paper. But again, the excitement that this community feels about these teams is just amazing. And thank you so much for what you've done.
Thank you. With that, if I could, I think we all love to hear from coaches and captains just about your experience and your season, and it doesn't have to be big or elaborate, but it's just something that the community is very proud of you, and we'd love to hear a little bit from coaches and captains, or whoever drew the short straw.
It's best to hear from our students. So ladies first, who gets to go?
Okay.
Maddie just said she would go.
And if you don't mind, just say your name and then.
Hi, I'm Maddie. What am I saying?
What was the highlight of your season?
Oh,
Tell
I
them
mean,
a
like,
little
we
bit
won
about
states. That would be a big highlight. It was really nice to see at our games the crowd filled with all our town and community. And I don't know, that was cool.
And is the coach or thank you, Maddie.
Forgive the hat.
Sorry to catch you flat-footed there a little bit. Sorry.
Please forgive my baseball cap that's rude of me. My deceased parents would not be pleased that I'm wearing this to a nice meeting. But I'm a Bath guy. I'm a shipbuilder, and we had some runs in Bath in the late '80s that I was a part of. 3 straight boys state championships, and I saw the whole community thing and what these players can do and programs can do for community. And I think that's really spot on. That's the important thing, to see the community come together. And there was a sea of maroon there for both of our games, and I've seen that before. And it's so uplifting, and I'm blessed to be part of it and to be able to coach these girls here. So thank you for having me.
Thank you.
I'm Travis Seaver. I'm the boys coach. First, I kind of want to echo David's sentiments and Todd's sentiments. The community piece, born and raised here in Cumberland, and it's just a great place to live and raise your kids. And then from this side, looking up in the stands, it wasn't too long ago. Well, it was long ago, but it feels like it wasn't, that I was in their shoes. And it's just an awesome feeling. And seeing the best, I tell everyone, the best moment of the state game is literally when we walk into the Civic Center this year, and we walked into the Civic Center last year, is literally seeing how big these guys' eyes get when they walk in and look up and just see everyone there. And it's truly a spectacular feat. I just can't talk enough about the guys that we had this year. We truly had a bunch of different kind of groups that we meshed together, and honestly, it was a little concerning the first couple of weeks of practice, saying that, how are we going to put this together? But by Christmas, we were clicking on all cylinders. And one of the true testaments that I take away from coaching is we're very fortunate to be playing in the last game possible that we can play in. But even if you win, that next day it's over, and it's a great feeling to have. But I can tell you that next day there's a big empty feeling not being around these guys, and that's just a great feeling of how much I enjoy it and hopefully how much they enjoy being around it. So thank you to you guys and providing everyone this opportunity, and thank you to the community for coming out and supporting all our programs. It's just it's such a great thing to see, and attending ice hockey games and all the other sports as well. It's just a great community to be around and all the support. So thank you.
Thank you. My son was on the basketball team, so I have to give that disclaimer. But beyond that, you all of the teams, and just because I was on the court with some of the basketball games, you guys have just given such a gift to the community. It was just so much fun running into people, talking to people, and everyone just feeling very, very proud. And so for all the pride that you've made us feel in Greeley, we want to thank you for that, and that you should feel that in yourselves and your coaches. And thank you very much, because you guys have, all the little kids are looking up. They enjoyed your season. It's something that not anyone's really going to forget. So thank you very much. You should be proud of yourself. You should hold your head high. So thank you. And then I think track. Do you want to do track next?
We have a track coach here.
Perfect.
We have one of them here. Coach Hunt is with us tonight.
Great.
So, sole
To speak on
representative.
behalf?
Yes, so thank you. I'll make it very brief. Thank you
No,
very
no.
much for the recognition. They're a great group of kids to work with. They're fantastic. So thank you very much for the opportunity. Thank you.
Well, thank you.
We do not have any of them here.
So we'll
this is
give
for
the
the track?
sentiment.
Yeah, for track.
All right, well, I'm just quickly, I'll get
Yeah.
to it. But
Don't worry, we're okay.
for the,
Fine.
again, boys and girls, crazy.
It's incredible.
But be it known that that we, the members of the Senate and House of Representatives, join in recognizing the Greeley High School girls and boys indoor track teams, which won the Class B state championships. We extend to all the members of the team our congratulations and best wishes, and be it ordered that this official expression of sentiment be sent forthwith on behalf of the 128th Legislature and the people of the state of Maine. And there are official copies of that, and there's copies for all of the students too that I'm just going to give to David.
Perfect.
But again, I had a son who ran indoor track. He was a sprinter. And I had the experience too of how just important a message that is. And one of the wonderful things about Greeley is not just that we win, because we do, it's crazy, but how many students participate in athletics. It's wonderful to see.
Track in particular. It's a great
Yeah,
number.
so it's just a tremendous story about this school. So thank you.
Well, thank you, and thank you very much. Please pass on to the kids. We're just very, very proud of all of them. Thank you. I think now we have girls hockey.
And I don't believe there's anybody here to
Okay.
represent that.
Well, girls, you did great out there in video world. Thank you very much, and we'll get the recognitions to them.
Will do.
Great. Thank you very much, everyone.
And thanks for having us here again tonight.
Yeah, I think we're all set. Thank you very much. We're next going to turn to our number 4 presentations, program curriculum highlight with Mark Bay. Welcome. Hi.
Hi, good evening. I'm Mark Bay. I'm the Pathway Specialist for MSAD 51. And what I'm hoping to do tonight is just give you a little bit of an overview of the Multiple Pathways program, kind of put it in context of where we are in the state, and then tell you some stories of kids who have benefited from the program. And then answer any questions you have after. So Multiple Pathways is essentially divided into 3 different sections right now. We have alternative education, which is a new part of the school. Steve Schaefer is heading that. And really that's a multidisciplinary courses with an emphasis on project-based learning. So right now one of the things they're doing is they're building a small rowboat over in the boatyard, or not the boatyard.
I was like, wow, you really run with it.
In Don Foster's yard. And so that's really he's combining math and science and English and maybe even a little bit of art when they get into designing the outside of the boat. So he's spearheading that program. Another offering we have is online learning, which is we're using a platform called Edgenuity, where students can earn credit outside of school, or I guess they could be doing inside of the school day, on subjects that they may not have the opportunity to learn in school, or that they want to learn on their own on an online platform. And then what I'm really doing is directing the extended learning opportunities for students. And this is a chance for students to acquire credit, knowledge, and or skills outside of the traditional classroom. One of the key concepts about this is they have to demonstrate mastery of rigorous, measurable course level standards. So each department provides me with their course graduation requirements. We design a plan that they're going to meet those graduation requirements through through whatever experience they use. And then the department leaders are kind of checking off and making sure that the student is achieving mastery. Then students also have an opportunity for field experiences, field-based experiences, to get out in the workplace, to see what it's like, to learn from mentors in an authentic learning experience. And this is something that's grown steadily over the last 3 years that I've been here, and is an incredibly powerful part of students' experience here at Greeley. So this really comes out of the past strategic plan to engage, empower, and inspire. We're going to provide broad-based learning opportunities with an emphasis on multiple pathways, and we're preparing for college, citizenship, and career within a global context, but also community partnerships. So we have a really great relationship with the Falmouth and Cumberland Chamber of Commerce, as well as the Greater Portland Chamber of Commerce. When I don't have a contact and I can't find a placement for a student, I call Darcy Scher, or I call Quincy Hensel from the Portland Chamber, and they hook me up with somebody. So it's a really great way to engage the community. So the extended learning opportunities, we really, I promise you, in Greeley is at the forefront in the state of Maine. I'm not sure exactly when Title 20-A, Part 3, Chapter 207, Subchapter 3 was passed, but really what the state has said that students must be able to allow to gain proficiency through multiple pathways. I've met with many people who do similar work that I do in the state of Maine, including people from Brunswick, Scarborough, South Portland, a whole host of communities, and we are really maybe not light years ahead, but a few years ahead of everyone else. We're also not quite up to where they are in New Hampshire, but in Vermont, but that's been part of what they've been doing for 8 to 10 years, and the growth that they have is really pretty incredible. So I have students who are doing in every content area, who are achieving multiple pathways and demonstrating mastery of their content standards in allied arts, English, art, foreign language, health, math, physical education, science, and social studies. So what I'd like to do next is just kind of tell you some stories about kids and what they've done this year. And I'm going to start off with a young woman who really was trying to decide, she's a senior, she was trying to decide on her college choice, what she wanted to do. She was really interested in English, she was really interested in interior design. So I kind of figured she could figure out the English part, you know, what the typical college curriculum would be like, but was going to be hard to figure that out about interior design. So I was able to get her an internship at Nicola's home in Yarmouth. And it was an amazing experience for her because she got to see what it's like to do every part of interior design. The very first task she had was going to the warehouse and picking out 57 blue tiles and arranging them from lightest to darkest so the client could come in and pick out what color tile they wanted in their bathroom. And she did great, and she progressed and progressed, and had, as she demonstrated her ability to work with them and to do well, they gave her more and more tasks. And it culminated in her going to be part of the design of the new Tuscan table out by the main mall. So it's not easy to see the picture, but if you happen to go to the Tuscan table or you happen to see a review, you happen to see pictures of it, she was part of that design team. She was there after school 2 days a week designing this with Nicola. And what's been really great about it, in a sense, is that she doesn't want to do interior design. She wants to study English. So she got, she saved herself a ton by knowing this interior. But she also had that great experience. So I had a student started last summer with me. She was interested in physical therapy. She wanted to apply to a physical therapy school. She had undergone physical therapy for a torn ACL. She loved it. Well, she didn't necessarily love the PT, but she loved the experience of going through the PT and what her physical therapist was able to do for her. But she wanted to start early. So I was able to get her an field experience with Betsy Sears, who's our school-based PT. And she went down this past summer, 2 days a week, to the middle school, and she worked with Betsy in PT. And she loved it. But when she came back to school, she wanted to try a regular PT place. So I found her a field experience at Saco Bay PT in Falmouth. And she liked it. But what she figured out is she loved working with the kids. It was not the adults. She didn't really think about when PT, I might have to help a 70-year-old who's rehabbing his hip, or I might have to help a 75-year-old who's got trouble walking and needs a walker. And she didn't like that part as much. What she really loved was working with the younger kids. So when she applied to colleges, she specifically looked for schools that were strong with their elementary school age programs. And what was fabulous about it was she was able to put on over 60 hours of experience into her college application. So great learning experience for that young woman. This is a really kind of great story where it's kind of a blend of two different things. This was a student who was seeking to graduate early. And he had a full load of classes. He needed half a science credit to fulfill his graduation requirements. And I was able to find him a field experience at Hunker Down, up at Sugarloaf, where his family goes often. And he learned a lot about science. He learned a lot about viscosity. He learned about all kinds of other science techniques that are beyond me. But what I think even more important is he gained confidence. This is a young man who, I'll just read you what his supervisor, Jason Loring, who is not an easy person, very demanding. He's a chef, and he said, he is amazing, super impressed. Finding good people has been hard. He's got a great head on him. I'm definitely going to find work for him in one of our restaurants down south as well. So they own some restaurants down here in Portland also, and one opening in Wyndham. Hunker Down just ended. They hired him on when he finished. So he would go up on weekends. He would ski or snowboard till 12, and then he would go to work from 12 o'clock till 8 o'clock at night, and then he would go to work the next morning or go to his internship the next morning, then he would ski, and then he would come home. So he was earning science credit on the weekend and gaining a ton of confidence. And I think for the confidence and the praise and what he got out of it, yes, the science part was really important, but the part that he grew as a person was even more important. And so I have two computer stories. One of the great things of having the relationships with the community, the Chambers of Commerce, is now people are coming to kind of talk to us and say, hey, we need some people. We're, as you probably know, in the state of Maine, we're suffering from, or we're getting older. You know, a few years ago, 20 years ago, there were 5.4 people working for every one retired person. Now, in 2020, it's projected to be 1.8 working people for every, or 2025, 1.8 working people for every one retired person. So we need good people. So Ron Kramer from All Computer Solutions called me and said, I'm desperately need good people. Do you have anyone? So I talked to Melissa Fowler, our guidance counselor, said, do you have anybody who's really good in computers want something else? So she hooked me up with these two students. I approached them. He is now paying for them to get their CompTIA A+ certification, which I guess is the industry standard for establishing a career in IT. So they are currently studying, and then they're going to take the test in the CompTIA A+, and when they get that certification, he's actually going to hire them, and they're going to go to work for him down in Portland. And then the other computer story, a young man who just started WinXNet down in Portland. And he again, and this is a kind of a two-part awesome kind of thing in that he's learning a ton about information technology. He's learning all the things around that are circled around or pointed to. And Steve Martell, who is my contact there, said, quite frankly, it's refreshing to see a young person who truly thrives on problem solving and is sincerely interested in continual improvement, a couple key attributes to any business. This is a brilliant kid, and so he gets that. But now he's getting the soft skills that don't come as naturally for him. So when he's in that environment, they are setting up an agenda to help him, not only with this, but also with the soft skills. So he's going to walk out with, a two-pronged thing that's really going to help him. Another young lad who's interested in environmental research, and he's has just started something at the Maine Audubon Society. He's going to be doing brook trout research. And he's reading from Bringing Nature Home. And one of the things that he's going to be doing, the two things that he's going to be doing, he's going to be doing actual research on brook trout for the Maine Audubon Society. But then the Bringing Nature Home book is kind of a dense, technical book. And what he's going to be doing for them is creating a blog and putting it on their website and breaking it down into more user-friendly language. And he's going to be earning an English credit, in part for what he's doing there. He's also looking to apply for an environmental science program in Vermont, and having this on his resume is going to be a huge boost for him. I have had, this is a great one, because I know nothing about fashion. These two young women approached me not too long ago wanting to know about fashion marketing, what type of experiences were out there. And so I looked, and I called Quincy, and I called Darcy, and there's not a lot of fashion marketing in Portland, Maine, or even in Greater Portland, that we could dig up. So tried to think of it a little differently, and found them a field experience at Aaron Flett. And what's been Aaron, and this is Aaron Flett's website. This is her Etsy, and so these are the things that you see. Pillows and luxury velvet rounds and, I don't know, all these other, her warehouse is just stocked with stuff. It's really pretty cool. So they started with her, and they learned everything from the ground up. They spent a day literally ironing the bottom half and the top half of a pillow. They watched how it was stitched. They watched how the screen printers did it. They participated in the screen printing. So they learned all that. And then as they progressed, what Erin did is they helped her with her Etsy, because these kids had so much more experience with Etsy than she did. This is their work. This is these two high school students' work right here. They're designing their Etsy. So they're practicing what they learned. We are now on our fourth student at Aaron Flett, and hopefully continue to have many more. Another student needing a math credit, half a math credit. Was able to find him a field experience at Residential Mortgage Services out of, they have many offices, but he's going to South Portland. He goes every other day for 2 hours a day. He's learning about amortization, escrow, primary mortgage insurance, fixed versus variable rates, all these incredible math concepts. And what's been really great beyond that too, which I think is probably enough to say that's great, but he's actually really interested in technology, so now they're going to put him on the IT side for a little while and show him that, and then they're going to show him the PR side, how they do PR, how RMS gets out to PR, their message. This also a student who started last summer, really interested in fashion, but also really interested in art. And this was broadcast, so I'll show you the video first. This was broadcast on WGME. You may have seen this. It takes just a second to load.
When you buy or lease a vehicle, it's more than the price that matters. It's the service that goes with it. At Patriot, that means you'll make great financing people and then our Subaru Genius.
We'll be taking a royalty later, but that's okay.
Getting a lot more interesting for a Greeley High School senior. In this week's Dirigo Stories, Jana Varnello shows us the program launching her passion for fashion into a potential career.
Making clothes is an exact art, one with lots of parts, pieces, and people.
specific. It's like learning how to start, stop.
Kim Ortengren makes sure it all falls into place at her clothing company, Wallace James.
A lot of successes and a lot of, oh, I had no idea that was a thing.
She opened her business in Portland a year ago. Before that, Ortengren spent 10 years working in many different roles of the fashion industry.
I really felt like I needed to understand the process further. That's just how I operate, and which led me to be able to do something like this.
An all-in-one clothing company, from design to production. Typically, a designer would have to use multiple businesses to do that.
The interesting part is that I had the ability to see the overall top-level picture of every avenue of the apparel business.
In her first year, Ortengren has found another new purpose for her company, teaching.
I've always had a really big passion for the arts and clothes. You've done Rotary without the mat, right?
Greeley High School senior Abigail Osgood is the first intern at Wallace James, learning everything she can about the industry.
Hopefully the student gains a lot of knowledge, and the mentor that is working with a student benefits in some way also.
Mark Bay helped set up the internship through Greeley's Pathways program. Students receive high school credit for real-world work experience.
It gives them contacts, and it gives them somebody in the business community who can support them and who can help further their career.
Osgood spends 6 hours a week at Wallace James. She's now considering new fashion industry majors in college that she hadn't before. Exactly the opportunity Ortengren wanted to create for Abby.
I would have killed for it because I would have actually understood what I was designing for. So I was kind of dreading another year of just high school. I wanted to do something a little different.
Thankfully for Osgood, it all clicked into place. In Portland, Jana Barnello, CBS 13 News.
Developing right now, 3 teenagers
So, this really wonderful story. This student started last summer. She was going during summertime 6 hours a week, and she continued to go all school year for 6 hours a week. She would go Mondays and Thursdays or Tuesdays and Fridays every other week. And she not only learned skills, you could see she learned to sew, she learned to measure, she learned to different weights of fabric, she learned what something called scuba fabric is. And but the two things that are pretty incredible was how it shaped her college choice. So when she started working with me, it was RISD and SCAD, Rhode Island School of Design and Savannah College of Art and Design. Those were where she wanted to go. Now she's looking at Colorado State, Iowa State, more agricultural-based programs that have the business aspect, because she's found what she's really interested in is the business too. She likes the fashion, but the business is really pretty interesting because these women have taken her under their wings and they've shown her every aspect of the business, including what it's like to work with a client. So I saw her mom not too long ago at an event that Kim and Kate were speaking at, and she looked at me and she said, you just saved us $150,000. So next year, what I'm working on right now are all these topics. I have students in all kinds of areas that they're interested in. I have them, just for example, on Friday this week, I have a meeting at Maine Med with their biomedical research out in Scarborough, trying to develop some community partnerships with them. And it spans. It's a huge gamut of what students want to do, and it's really pretty exciting. But I want to end with a story that started last year, which is one of the most incredible stories that I know about. So this is Mark Baston. This is a picture from when he was featured in the Forecaster last year. So Mark was a standout student at Paths. He was in auto tech. His teacher, he was a mentor to many younger students, really did well. Drove this black Ford F-350 that spewed gas at smoke everywhere, but he's just a great student, great kid. but he needed he needed a full math credit to graduate. And what I was able to find for him was a field experience at where did he go? Wyndham Diesel, New England Diesel in Wyndham, excuse me. And he went to New England Diesel every day after pass, or I shouldn't say every day, every other day after pass. And he was earning his math credit, learning about torque, and again, I don't know about fashion or trucks. So he learned about torque and differential ratios and all that. So Mark was a student who was, and he'll admit, graduating was not going to be easy for him. But through this, and through finding his passion and finding success, he went on to not only graduate, but he won the Skills USA competition for diesel mechanics in the state of Maine. He won a $10,000 scholarship to the University of Northwestern Ohio. He then represented the state of Maine in diesel mechanics at the Skills USA competition. He won that. He is now at the University of Northwestern Ohio on a full scholarship, studying diesel mechanics there. This year, Skills USA is flying him to Russia to represent the United States in the Skills USA diesel mechanics competition. So that's a sampling of what we do in the Pathways program. It's a great team effort involving everyone from the administration and guidance to the support people that I have in the district level. And it's pretty inspirational what happens to kids when they can get outside and they can see education in a real world context. And I'm happy to answer questions as best I can if you'd like.
Any questions? How many kids did you worked with you this
in
past
the field
year?
experiences, 22 so far.
Okay. And and I assume those numbers have been going up over the course of the last 4 years?
Yeah.
Okay. And what are you roughly anticipating for next year?
I'd hope 100.
Okay.
I don't know. I am 50-ish would be my guess, hopefully
Okay.
double.
Karen?
Mark, I continue to be impressed with the number of outreach, that you've done. And I can remember talking to you 2 years ago and you were just starting, and, now you've just got such a huge, some great connections for the students, which is great. And I will say that I think the 100 number, after I listened to all of the English Honors
Just gonna
11 presentations, this extended learning opportunities really hit a home run with them. And now the students themselves are starting to hear about it and plan for it, and can't wait to get on your list. So I think that's been great, and I do think that for me, this is one of those programs that I'm happy that you're presenting tonight at our public hearing, because I think it's one of those programs that brings the whole community and schools back around. I understand that sports programs do that in a different way, but your presentation, I think, is really what we're talking about. Schools are not just brick and mortar any longer, and students are learning everywhere. And I know that you've been very instrumental in reducing our dropout rate, and also reducing the number of students who have failures in coursework through this type of program. So that's been great to see.
Yeah, I also sat in on the 11th grade presentations, and it was unbelievable, the experiences. In fact, the one thing, and I'd like your thoughts on it, is, which I think is a high-end problem, is that they were saying they wish they had heard more about it in terms of advertising to a broader group. So, you're probably, your own successes are beginning to, that people, the kids want to know. And do you have any thoughts about increasing outreach or
Sure.
letting kids, beginning to connect with kids so we can get them the services where appropriate?
Yeah, I've been presenting to all the junior advisories. I have about 4 left to present to. And pretty within, a day or two after presenting, I get 2 or 3 emails. And can you meet with me to go over X or Y? Yeah.
Right. Well, it's just really exciting, and thank you very much for coming tonight. And we look forward to these stories, because this is, I think, this is something that I think the board as a group has been really supportive of. You have helped us through our learning curve. All the administrators, you saw it, and the teachers, you saw a need for it, and you have educated us, and we're so happy to support it, and we really look forward to all the exciting things in the next few years.
Thank you.
So thanks very much for coming down.
Thanks.
Or coming up. Our next presentation, which will precede the public hearing, will be on the budget. So Jeff is going to walk through a budget summary, give us current information regarding it, and then we'll turn to public comment.
So, I don't know why I put Mark Bay before me. Note to self, next year. I think actually Mark's presentation was really timely because, as he's leaving, I will say that he has really brought life to a budget item that went into the first one into the budget 3 years ago, when we started to envision what Pathways means for our district. And at that time, we started with, our plan was to start with students who were not happy or disaffected with regular education classes and start an alternative ed program, which we did not have in the district, which Mark did. And then we transitioned this year to the broader Pathways, which Mark just presented, so that we now have two sides of the Pathways program, which is very well-rounded and is eventually, hopefully, will meet the needs of many students in our district. And the part Mark didn't talk about is that eventually our goal is for Mark to spearhead a field experience program that will touch every student at Greeley before they graduate. So that they will have some sort of a field experience prior to graduation at Greeley High School, whether that's a few days or a week or whatever prior to graduation. They will have something in a field of some interest prior to graduation. It's something that I feel very strongly about. It also came back very strong on the strategic planning survey information. So anyway, the budget is not just numbers. The budget is people. The budget is kids. The stories behind the budget, the support the board has given to the Pathways program over the last 3 years has been substantial and significant and has changed student lives. And it's more than, so please know that the budget is more than just numbers. It's definitely stories. I was given this cool clicker, and apparently it's not clicking away.
Not cool if it doesn't work.
No clicking at all. So let me grab that for you. So I'm going to give you a quick summary.
Slowly.
A quick summary of the budget to date. The budget has changed somewhat since I first presented it on March 26th. And I'll just start with the enrollment. The enrollment has not changed much since March 26th. We have 2,043 students in the district as of October 1st, which is our official state required count for the year. Planning decisions in October of this coming year, the new school year, is predicting 2,070 students in our district. I am predicting 2,049 students. So far, planning decisions has been right, and I have been wrong. We've only had 1 year so far since their report. So we'll see who's right and who's wrong next fall. So my guess is it's going to be somewhere in between what I'm predicting and what planning decisions is predicting. The reason I predicted 2,049 students is based on exactly what we have today and just moving that forward, moving those numbers forward. Planning decisions said they have more information than I have, and they're probably right. And they're predicting a little bit more, more students in our district. All right, so this was on March 26th, this was the budget that I presented as a proposed budget for FY19. It was a $37,621,316 budget proposed with a variance of almost 1.7 million. And that would be 4.65% increase in expenditures from the current year. So that's what I presented to you a month ago. So since March 26th, some things have happened. When we present the budget in March each year, there's so many things that are continuously changing. Health insurance numbers never come in March. We usually get those numbers closer to April 1st. We still have state subsidy things that are outstanding, actually still outstanding today. The legislature is adjourned, but they might be back in a couple weeks. They will be back in a couple weeks, but they may or may not take up some other issues that may or may not impact our revenues at the end of the day. But this is the information that we get. Budget's a process, and things do change. Things have changed since March 26th. First of all, we've had a number of retirements since March 26th. And the reason for that is that we have a deadline for folks to notify us if they're intending to retire. And the deadline is there. They actually get a payout if they notify us by a certain date. And so that date has come and gone, and we did get several retirements at the end of this school year. So that actually, when we went back and looked at the savings, that realized about $75,000 in savings, and that was in addition to a couple of other retirements that we had gotten earlier. The kindergarten teacher at the Mabel Wilson School was an increase that I recommended, or I'm recommending to the board as you deliberate the budget, and that was not in the original budget. The reason I'm recommending it at this point is that our kindergarten registration numbers at the Wilson School continue to be higher, quite a bit higher than they were at this time last year. In fact, I don't want to put Mrs. Robbins on the spot, but I have about 20 students more right now than we did this time last year. So it's something that we can't always predict, and at this point I think it would be prudent for us to include another kindergarten teacher in our budget. High school teacher, we had, if you recall, we had removed that position, an FTE position at the high school for $62,500. And we had also removed a middle school 6-8 teacher at the middle school for $62,500, as well as an ed tech at Mabel Wilson School. So all three of those positions I had originally proposed that we reduce the budget by those three positions. None of those reductions were easy to make, and none were easy to propose. All have implications, and all were issues in terms of us looking at those positions. So at this point, I'm recommending to the board that you consider reinstating those positions to the budget for next year. In addition, because of the new kindergarten position, we also had a second grade classroom position that we need to think about in terms of technology and furniture. We just don't have technology and furniture sitting in a storage room for students at the K through 3 level, because that school has been growing. It has been smaller, and now it's getting bigger at that school, and we don't have things stored away. So we actually have to buy new when we consider those things. So that additional amount is actually through a lease purchase, and that's the actual amount that we would be lease purchasing at the end of the day. And then we had a health insurance adjustment of $450,000. We budgeted 9%, which is what the MEA Trust had told us would be the maximum amount that we would receive. The district has received all kinds of different amounts over the years, anywhere from 0%, usually 5 or 6 or 7%, to up to 13% in recent years. So it's very difficult to predict. So the best thing that we do is take what the MEA Trust tells us early on will be the maximum amount and budget for that, which was 9%. It came in at 0. And I will tell you that that is an extreme rarity in the state of Maine for any insurance, for any school district. To come in at 0 just doesn't happen. And so it was a complete surprise, a good surprise. And it realized an adjustment of $450,000 to our budget. And then we had a reallocation. Since March 26th, we had been thinking about this for a while, reallocation of a part-time ed tech position. We know we need more offerings at the high school in the science department. These are electives that we can offer students. Our student need is there. And so we decided to reallocate, which is cost neutral, a part-time ed tech position, and added on to a part-time science teacher and brought that person up to full-time. So if you take all those numbers and add them up and subtract, the net adjustment since I first presented the budget means that the budget will be reduced by $291,521 if you accept this budget on May 7th. So if that's the case, you can go to the bottom here and you'll see the adjustments have been made. The yellow, you can't see it on the screen, but CTE and debt service are yellow. The rest of it is green. Those two areas did not change. They remain the same. Every other area of the budget did change. So the FY19 budget, new numbers will be $37,329,795, which would be a variance of just under 1.4 million, which brings the expenditure increase down to 3.84%. It was at 4.65% on March 26. So this is the pie graph that shows how we take the percentage of the budget. This has been adjusted since March 26. These numbers were slightly different by cost center. If you look at the first 5, regular instruction, special education, career and technical education, other instruction, and student support, that's your classroom. Those funds go directly to the classroom. The last 5 are more on the operations end of the district, keeping the district operating and organized. If you add those up, we are just at 74% in terms of, or just under 74% of the funds in our budget go to the classroom directly. The state average is 68%, so we're quite a bit higher than the state average. This is another way of looking at the budget. If you look at the increase of 3.8% for the increase in the budget, the opening doors increase out of that 3.8% that I'm now proposing. The opening doors is 2.7%. And that is just under $1 million. And those are fixed costs, salaries, benefits, by keeping our staff as they are and rolling the benefit and looking at the benefits, looking at the salary increases and debt service and electricity and all the fixed costs that we have to run the school district. The increase is 2.7%. So the additional 1.1% are things that we know we need to be working on through the strategic plan. Those are our strategic priorities. But the amount that we're spending money on the strategic plan is far less than obviously we would like to see, but that's where we are in reality, with reality. Just to give you a perspective on that, $538,000 or so dollars was submitted for priorities this year. We were only able to propose funding $392,000 out of that. So our revenue picture changed only a little bit, and it changed for the positive. We went up $4,265. There was an adjustment with the Shebig Island revenue. We're actually collecting a little bit more revenue from Shebig Island for this coming year. And so our revenue is down 5.55% instead of 5.58%. So basically, essentially, our revenue picture has not changed much since March 26. So the total revenue decrease for next year is $664,383. Pretty significant. Pretty significant. This is a picture of our revenue. I showed this on March 26 as well. It shows over the last 3 years our state subsidy or allocation that we receive from the Department of Education through the governor's budget that is adopted by the legislature each year has been reduced by just over $1 million over the last 3 years in state aid. So we've lost $1,024,784 in 3 years. That's a lot of money for a district of our size to be losing. So this is the assessment overview since March 26 with all the changes that I just went through. Our total budget, instead of being $37,621,316, the total budget is now $37,329,795. So it went down. Revenues went up slightly, as I mentioned, because of Shebig Island. Increase $11,305,814, essentially unchanged. And then the tax assessment as a result of those two other numbers has gone down to $26,023,981, which is roughly $290,000. So what does that mean for a tax effect? In Cumberland, On March 26th, it would have been $1 on the mill, which would have been 5.32% increase. In the tax effect in Cumberland, we're now at 83 cents on the mill, or 4.42% increase. And that's $83 per $100,000 of value for someone's home. In North Yarmouth, it also dropped from $1.11 on March 26 when I first presented, with all the changes now down to 94 cents on the mill, or 5.79% increase. It had been 6.70% increase. Again, that's $94 per $100,000 of property value. So on an average home in our community, it's $350,000 at this time. That would mean in Cumberland, it would be $290 more, or $24.17 per month. And in North Yarmouth, that would be $329 more per year, or $27.42 per month. So looking at our comparison districts, which we can compare a lot of things, and they compare us as well. Yarmouth, Falmouth, and Cape Elizabeth. If you look at the expenditure increase and also the tax increase, because those are two different things. In Yarmouth, the expenditure increase for next year is proposed at 3.9%. The tax increase is at 4.4% in Yarmouth. In our district, it's 3.84%. In Cumberland, 4.42%. In North Yarmouth, 5.79%. Falmouth, their expenditures are up 3.33%, but their tax effect is 6.4%. And in Cape Elizabeth, the expenditures are up 3.10%. Their tax effect, because of declining revenue, is up 10.2%. This is another way of looking at our cohort districts. So if you take the gross budget for each of the districts and you remove the revenue, you back out the revenue, you come up with a tax assessment number, and you divide that by the number of students, and this will give you an adjusted per pupil amount after you've considered revenue. So if you take the expenditures, back the revenue out, you have your tax assessment, divide by the number of students in the district currently. So if you do that, Yarmouth is at $12,424. Greeley is at $12,738. Falmouth is at $13,813 per pupil, and Cape Elizabeth is at $14,874.
Can you go back to that for a second?
Yep.
Just for a second.
So this is basically the net effect for tax effect
Yes.
in each district.
Yeah, I just wanted to absorb the numbers for a second. Okay,
And this presentation, by the way, will be on the website tomorrow morning.
thank you.
And this is another way of looking at that slide just previously, looking at the per pupil cohort comparison. Again, backing out the revenue from the expenditures, looking at the per pupil after you divide by the number of students. This is another look at that. So this will be, this presentation will be on our website tomorrow. And we have a lot of information about the 2018-19 budget on our website. If you go to district links and then go to budget 2018-19, we have all kinds of materials. We have several presentations that have been given on the budget. We have all the budget numbers, every account line that is in the budget you can look at. It's all right there. It's great reading. Riveting. I think that's it. Oh, no, it isn't.
Nope, not quite yet. The big show.
May 7th. So the board is scheduled to adopt the FY19 budget on May 7th. On May 17th is the district budget meeting. Any voting resident of Cumberland North Yarmouth is invited to the district budget meeting. And then on June 12th is the public referendum, which is the ballot for voting. So those are upcoming dates.
Great. Does anyone have any questions or comments of Jeff? Okay, great.
Okay, thank you.
Thank you. We're now going to turn to public hearing. This is our fourth public presentation of the budget, but this is our first public hearing. Where the way that we'll handle it is, please, anyone who wishes to speak, please just go up to the podium and state your name and your address so we know where you're from. And the way that it works for those who haven't done it is generally the comments are directed to me as chair. I think we'll be able to manage. I don't really want to do very strict timing issues, but if in fact it runs a little long, I can exercise prerogative to keep it a little shorter, but I'm going to try not to do that if possible. With respect to the board, just please direct your comments through me, and then we'll start that. It's generally, mostly we're really here to learn from the public for the thoughts and the comments. This isn't, we won't be taking a vote. We won't be taking a straw man vote. That doesn't mean that after public hearing, if my colleagues have comments, obviously we can have them. But in terms of just pure procedure for the public hearing, what we'll do is just go ahead and let's start. Anyone who wishes to speak, just go up to the podium and please say your name.
Pete Wilson, 18 Oak Ridge Road. I have just two items. I'll just ask, well, in your letter, Gigi, this reflects a reasonable 3.84% increase in expenditures over the current year despite a $600,000 decline in revenue. So I'm saying decline in revenue does not put upward pressure on expenditures. This implies that declines in revenue do put upward pressure on expenditures. So at this point, do you feel decreases in revenue put upward pressure on expenditures?
Well, first of all, with respect to the question and answer, we can talk about the interrelationship. You're absolutely right. Expenses stand on their own. You're also right that expenses are increasing, the vast majority of which is going to be fixed costs, which are salary, and luckily this year, not as much of an increase in benefits. They're also including project energy costs, they're including debt service. And so to answer your question, you're absolutely right. Expenses stand alone. With respect to revenues, however, and the like, I think I just want to hit head on with respect to revenues, that declining state revenues, some will see it as that, obviously we see it in terms of looking at our budget, seeing what's available, and continuing to look for efficiencies. But the reason generally, there's some issues, but generally a lot of the reason why revenue is going down is because based on a formula, our valuations are such that the state thinks that this local property, local community can afford more out of its own pocket. It increases the local share. And so I don't see, and the electorate can always tell us differently, and we'll go and we'll brainstorm. But the way our budgets have been supported by the district, and we very much see that the declining revenue means that our local participation does have to increase. We don't see it as an overwhelming mandate that we decrease educational services. And so they are indeed revenue. We have been, with our presentation, looking at the general tax impact, but no, expenses and revenues are independent. You're right.
Thank you. And then the second item, last year, I looked at what we're spending per kid as compared to our chosen peer group. I looked at the average of Yarmouth, Cape, Falmouth, compared it to what we're spending, just expenditures. We're spending $2,000 per kid more than the average of those three schools. 2,000 kids, 2,000 per kid, that's $4 million. Help me understand what's going on there. Why do we feel that we're spending reasonably given those numbers?
Does someone want to take that one, or I can hit it? Go ahead, Kara. No, you can go.
So Pete,
Karen is chair of our finance committee.
I know that this has been something that, well, I'm just going to back up. When you take the total number, a budget, and divide it by the total number of students and call that the cost per student, and you compare an SAD to 3 districts that are municipalities, which Cape, Falmouth, and Yarmouth are, then what you really need to do, which the state does, is back out debt service, back out transportation costs, because obviously our transportation costs are going to be much larger. Being that we're driving kids back and forth over 2 communities over twice a day. And also back out any other large, like overlay costs, because in a municipality, some of those costs could be carried in the municipality's budget. So it's really not an apples to apples comparison when you take the budget and divide it by the total number of students. So that's why I would respectfully disagree that we are not $2,000, expending $2,000 more per student.
Then when you present these numbers, you should put that adjustment in. You should, if you have to estimate it, but obviously you folks are aligning those schools. You just presented something that aligned them.
We only align them by looking at what we actually know each of us receives from the state in terms of revenue from the state, because those numbers are very different for each of the towns. So that we don't know what their transportation costs are, and I wouldn't even know how to find that in another district's budget or town's budget.
Scott, did you want to?
I think if we're not at least estimating what those differences are, I understand what you're saying, they're different, okay. Well, I think we're flying a little bit blind if we ignore it. At first glance, okay, it looks like $2,000 per kid. You're saying, no, it's something else, not saying what else it is.
Well,
Maybe it's $1,200 per kid.
Yeah, I mean, did you want to say something, Scott?
No, I mean, one of the areas, and it's one of the areas that's been discussed by Finance Committee and by others in the past, has been similar things around our special education budget. Right. So for instance, you know, if you have, Falmouth has a special ed budget that's about $1.5 million less than ours. Mm-hmm. However, we get over $1 million more in subsidy in special education allocation from the state than our peers do. So when you look at that revenue or that subsidized amount from the state, it kind of realigns that extra $1 million or that extra $1.5 million. The other part is that we're also expending costs this year in some of our areas, special ed being one of them, for out-of-district placement in other areas that get subsidized in the following year. So I think that that number alone makes up a really big difference. Although it's subsidized in a revenue, right? So it's a recognized cost by the state and a subsidizable cost by the state. But it also drives up our per pupil cost, even though we have the revenue coming from the other side on it. So,
right, so that is...
So I think that's one area that we could look at as well.
Right, so that is the one area that there is a nexus between the expenses and the revenues, but it's not all the same year. So the revenues that you can get for example, subsidies for special ed is not necessarily all in that same calendar year. We get that revenue a few years out, so it's not completely a linear picture, and I know you know that. The point though, I do think we've had a pretty vocal budget season so far, and I know it will probably be more vocal. But I will say as chair, and I think everyone on this board sees it, is this board has an incredible amount of involvement in the budget. And with that, I think that to the extent when you do see those expenditures, putting aside the revenues, that they are, they certainly catch our eye. And I think that there is discussions about, and I know that every year people are constantly looking for efficiencies, people are constantly looking for ways to cut. I will say, and I think I'm echoing many of my co-board members, is that a budget is not the best. It's a very blunt instrument to make cuts. Some of the cuts that you saw, for example, we can make cuts. It might mean that 30 kids in high school don't take psychology. It might mean that we don't have an ed tech. It might mean that without really studying it, we'd have to break apart the team modeling for middle school. That doesn't mean that these things shouldn't be looked at and shouldn't be looked at systematically. But to do that under the confines of a board budget vote that we unilaterally say, this is what you need to cut or this is what you need to cut, it is, I believe, too crude of an instrument, and that is one of the reasons among many that I am supporting this budget. But we are aware of the efficiencies. We do know we have to look at those numbers. We are looking at our cohorts in terms of how they are doing things. I know that Julie and Sally and everyone were looking at that data. And so we will continue to look at it, but that is the thoughts. I mean, we are aware of the expenditures. We also think there's the set off with the revenues, and we also think that the budget is prudent. So
I'll just state this, that you people are in a lot better position than I am to estimate what these discrepancies are that you're pointing out. And if you're not going to say what they are or estimate what they are, all I can see is, I haven't calculated it for this year. I can see what it was last year. All I can see for last year is $2,000 per kid. What you're saying isn't, there's nothing definitive or even an estimate in what you're telling me. So all I can see is, what's in this thing and what's in there the other thing. That's all. Thanks.
thanks very much. Is there anyone else for public comment? Go on up. Thank you.
I'm sort of chuckling to myself. I'll introduce myself in a second, and then I'll explain why I'm chuckling. My name is Bob Knupp, and I'm from away. I've learned how to say that now. We moved here 3 years ago. We live at 4 Eagles Way, just off of Route 1 in a condominium. We don't have any swimming pool. We don't have a tennis court. I don't own a front yard. I don't own a backyard. I don't have a view of the ocean. I have a view of Route 1 and the traffic, but I'm happy where I am. Based upon my assessment, well, let me tell you why I was chuckling, because I was at the Cumberland meeting, the town meeting, and the chair said, it's time for everybody to get to the school board and show up at a meeting and tell them what you think. I don't see anybody here. I guess I'm the only one that listened to that. And I'm not going to tell you what I think, because you've heard too much already. And I, first of all, applaud all school boards across the United States for the citizens who serve for tireless hours and do work that is not even begin. The community doesn't appreciate what you do. And I secondly applaud your superintendent for finding almost $300,000 to reduce the effect of this tax increase. For me, that tax increase is going to be $373. It's the nearest I can figure it out. And you add the town increase, and it's going to bring my tax increase in 1 year up to $500. I know your teachers have to receive increases. They work hard and they deserve to be paid well. I'm retired. I don't have any COLAs. I receive Social Security. I save for my retirement. I have funds invested that I draw down on, and I have a small county that I worked for as a solicitor. I have a small county retirement. And I can tell you that I wrote to the chairman of the retirement board recently, because I noticed in going over my records that I hadn't received any COLA increase since 2007. And I said, why? And he says, well, the retirement board meets each year and thinks about it, but they haven't taken any action. So many of us, and I think that there was a fellow by the name of Bob Hartman who was at the town meeting, a senior citizen, and many of us are unfortunately aging, or maybe fortunately. And the impact that you have on the aging population, and I think your superintendent hit the nail on the head when he said that the working population had decreased from over 5 workers to projected in 2025, 1.8. Another thing that I thought of just sitting here, and it's just, first of all, I think that there is a potential when you talk about the need for new equipment for, I thought it was kindergarten, I might not have been listening that closely, but whatever it was, there's got to be school districts that have surplus equipment. I don't know that you need to go out and buy new. Maybe I'm nickeling and diming, but I think you should try to nickel and dime as much as you can to help the senior citizens in this community keep the tax increases down to as small an increase as possible. The last thing I'd say is that I was over at a meeting the other day and heard the manager from Cape Elizabeth. My son lives there, and I have a senior in high school who's graduating from Cape and has done very well and will be going to Holy Cross next year as a physics major. Ha.
You go.
Anyway, to get to the point, I think that you have to look at every number that you can. Cape, the reason I was bringing that up, is going to go through a reassessment in 2 years. I have no idea what's going to happen in these two jurisdictions that you serve, but keep in mind that if there is a reassessment, that's going to help you. It's going to help you a lot because as the values go up, then the impact of increases goes down. So those are my only thoughts. I, again, applaud what you do. I'm glad that you're working in the direction. The only thing I'd urge you to do between now and May 17th is please take a pencil and don't just leave it sit where it is. Just use some creative thinking if you can. I mentioned one area and many others. I don't know whether Maine has piggyback purchasing. Have you ever heard of that? Piggyback purchasing is a concept where municipalities can bid on the same terms for equipment as the state agencies do. And if you're not doing that, if you haven't heard of it, or maybe it doesn't exist, maybe Dale knows, I don't know. But I think you can use piggyback purchasing and be very aggressive in your purchasing of materials. That's all I wanted to say. Thank you for hearing me.
Thank you very much. Does anyone have any?
Can I just thank Bob?
Yes.
Bob's on the, thank you, Bob, for coming tonight. He's on the Aging in Place Committee in Cumberland, and and I've been privileged to work with him there, and I just really appreciate you coming because I did see your comments at the town council meeting. We were in our own meeting here, but I do watch the
we did
meetings
hear about
afterwards. Yes. And so I do appreciate you coming out to share your thoughts, and I appreciate all you do on the Aging in Place Committee as well.
Yeah. Thank you very much. Any other comments?
Rick Doan, 4 Catalpa Lane. I received the letter from the board chair on the 12th and subsequently emailed the board on some thoughts. Appreciate the opportunity to speak to you tonight. I have to admit I'm frustrated. I really have looked at the data that is available, and I honestly don't understand the absence of energy and concern that seems to permeate these discussions. I don't, without singling any individual out or intending to be unfair, I look at these numbers and I see a completely different picture. I see, if you go back over the last 5 or 6 years, I see stable to declining enrollments that are ticking up now. You have raised 6% on average of increases if you look back at the last 6 actual years and the budget as it's presented. If you project that 6% increase out 3 years, you're raising $31 million from the tax base. I just don't get it. This is not business as usual. You realize $525,000 in savings off your working budget, you spend $290 of it. You realize $11 million in state aid when you compare yourself to districts that by your own chart are raising half that or less, and you say our student costs are less, it's still money that you're spending. I really believe that this is a problem for our community. It's a problem for our seniors. Something in this process is broken, and I would encourage you to step back and take a look at it, what you're doing, and ask yourself if we can sustain these dollars coming out of the property tax base. I don't believe we can. I think it's going to have real implications for, again, for our residents. I think it's going to have political implications, and I would like to see it done with a scalpel rather than a hammer. And I think if you guys keep spending money the way you are spending it, you're going to create a level of frustration within the community that is going to impact negatively our ability to do this the way it probably ought to be done. So those are my comments, and I appreciate the opportunity to share.
Thank you. Would anyone like to?
I mean, where did the 6% come from? Is that the assessment, or is that the amount that the budget has increased, the expenditure side of the budget?
What I did, Scott, is so the 2012-2013 year,
yep.
Your property tax assessment was 18.6, 7.8% increase over prior year. So I just repeated that out. Your two most recent years, 17-18 is a 6.5% increase over year prior. This year's budget, were to survive as presented, will be an 8.5% increase over as presented.
Yeah, and what did you? One of the things that I think is missing in that analysis is how much property value has gone up in each community. So when you look at the value, and that if you're looking at like that increase over the 5 years, it's distributed over 2 communities. And then also in addition to that, there's increasing value in both communities at a time where we're having decreased state subsidy. So it's not necessarily a 6% effect on taxes. It's probably roughly 2% less than that, or even 3% less, depending on the growth in each community. So like Cumberland has had a very significant amount of growth, which has offset that amount quite a bit. So I mean, I understand the numbers and where you're coming, and they're absolutely true, you know, the increase, because most of our costs are fixed cost of salaries and benefits, which can range anywhere from $700,000 to $1 million in any given year. And those are costs depending on where health insurance lands. So the numbers are correct. Most of our budget is fixed around those numbers. But the only missing analysis of that, I think, is the increased property value in both communities at a time that we have had decreasing state subsidy, which is also reminiscent of those increasing property values.
You know, I agree with you, and I don't want to throw too many numbers
Yeah.
around, but, you know, if you look at your state subsidy number, for instance, in the 2012-13 year, you received 11.3. It went to 11.8. It peaked in the year that Jeff illustrated in his. But the year before, when you had exactly the same number of students as you have now, it was 11.3. You're only down $750,000 in state subsidy over a 4-year period. Yet you're raising over $4 million more from the property tax assessment.
Which were a lot of those fixed costs that I was talking about.
No,
the
I get
salaries
that. I run my own budgets.
Yeah, and the mill rate increases are a lot less than that.
Yeah. But
And also, the state has raised the amount that we're required to raise in local districts. So, and you and I talked about this. So it used to be, in order for each community to get its state aid, it's required to raise a certain amount, and that amount has gone up from 8.3 to 8.5.
Right.
And so that's
on the mill
rate.
Right.
And then additionally, you know, public education is funded by by property, you know, it's based on property valuation. The state used to use a 3-year look back on property valuation, which would have been a little bit better for these 2 communities. Now they use a 2-year average, and that has increased. So, and both Cumberland and North Yarmouth, property valuation, as Scott has mentioned, has increased considerably in the last 2 years.
Right.
So when the state reduces the amount of revenue that they're providing to a school district, it's not suggesting that the school district is in fact overspending for its education. It's simply saying that because your community's, you know, essential wealth based on its property valuation has increased, is the expectation of the state that communities that can afford to do that will continue to support public education and therefore provide additional dollars from the state to communities that do not have that level of property valuation.
Yeah.
So it's not a statement on whether or not we're overexpending as a community.
No, and honestly, I wouldn't attribute that to the state. I would attribute it to myself. I think you are overspending, and I don't assign, inappropriate motives to it. But you're obligated to raise 8.7. You're raising 11.7 from the mill rate, if I am doing that analysis correctly. There's just a lot of reason to look at these numbers, and I would leave you with the thought that wherever you are now and whatever you do right now, you're not going to see corresponding increases, I don't believe, in the tax base as you look down the next few years. You have a performing arts center that's coming online. You're going to have more ask for insurance. A 0% health insurance renewal, as we know well at Norton, is not going to happen with any frequency. So you're going to have things you can't control in the mix. I'm very concerned about what this looks like. So, thank you.
Thank you very much. Any other comments? Any other comments for public hearing? Thank you.
Hi, I'm Mary Carbone. I'm on 73 Windy Holloway. I don't have any prepared statements. I just wanted to come and voice my support for the school board and for the budget that you've proposed. We've been in Cumberland for just about 5 years. My daughter's in first grade. And we've had an amazing experience. I think from what I can see, the staff is amazing, from the classroom teachers to the administration. It's an incredibly supportive environment. And I say that as an educator myself. I've been in education for over 14 years. And you can tell when you're in a community that values education. And it's nice to see that the school board supports that. So I just want to say thank you, and I think you guys are doing a good job, and I'm happy to pay the taxes, and I think I'm getting a great deal, quite frankly, when I look around. So thank you very much.
Thank you very much. Any other comments? Any other public comments? Okay. So turning to the board, there is no requirement that anyone weigh in. I didn't know if anyone wanted to share their thoughts on the budget. Otherwise, we'll just go forward with our agenda.
Can I just say one thing?
You can, yeah, of course.
I just want to, I do want to thank Rick and Pete, although I think I just missed him, for coming and sharing their thoughts tonight, and Mary as well. And I don't, I think sometimes when we respond back, it's just to make sure that we're getting we know community members sometimes come to the budget at any time, during this process, whether they watch us tonight, whether they come and are seated here in the audience, whether they stream us at later or catch us on Channel 2 in another week. And so I don't want it to be taken that I am not hearing you, because I do. And I think that one of the things that I think the board has done, or the district actually, has done well that I've seen in my time on the board, is to try to be that forward-thinking board and to look at, when we look at things like the energy projects that we've done, when we look at the implementation of the APUDA report, which took a look at our special ed staffing, when we look at the space study that the school is doing to make sure we maximize our space on the campus. I want you to know that if I respond, it's not that I disagree with what you're saying. I just want to make sure that we're getting as much information out there, because this is a community budget, and I want the community to understand what they're voting on by the time we ask them to vote on it at the referendum. And I hope to see you all at the referendum. I hope you will bring some more friends and neighbors to the referendum, because, that is really important to us as well. So we will be looking at staffing, as we always do, but in a more concerted effort, because we do understand the tax impact, and we do understand the responsibility of every child, every classroom, every day. And it's finding that balance that is the struggle.
Can I just add something? I think I also like to thank people for weighing in. I just wanted to respond to something that Rick had said as well. Around the mill rate, the expectation that the state has around the mill and raising the mill, that is a baseline that the state gives us, and they said this is the minimum amount of quality education that we expect your community to pay for. I will tell you that just about every community in the state pays a lot more because they know that that minimum is not enough. And Representative Deno's here, and from the legislature, and I think you would agree too, the legislature agrees that this is just a baseline. If you want a quality schools district, you have to pay for it through local funds as well. It's not just from the state. So there is the 8.51 expectation of mills that has to be raised by a community is absolutely the lowest amount that the state expects, and is certainly not something that I would consider to be anywhere close to a quality school system. I just want to make sure that was put out there.
Okay, thank you very much for coming to public hearing. We're going to continue on with our meeting. Okay, turning to committee reports. Thank you, everyone. Vote. Vote. Go to the budget meeting, May 17th, June 12th.
You don't want to forget that, do you?
Oh, shoot. I almost, all right. I was moving right to committee. I know. I feel like you got to remember the camera's on. I know. I actually, I was joking with Jeff today because he had his superintendent strategic priorities overview, and I kept on saying, "Are you sure you need to do that tonight? Are you sure?" And here I am, just kind of blowing it off and going to finance meeting. So let's go ahead. He's keeping me honest. Superintendent's report, draft 2018-21 strategic priorities overview.
Thank you. I'm so pleased to give my report.
I know. I'm sorry.
I'll try to make it brief. So I'm really pleased to announce that the district, there's a lot of different surveys and reports and saying, the health of the district, et cetera, but it seems to be very consistent every time we see any of these. So I'm happy to report that backgroundchecks.org is a national organization that does reviews of school districts in the United States based on math and reading test scores, dropout rates, school funding, and poverty rates. And after looking at nearly 10,000 school districts in the nation, in each state by state, Greeley was ranked number 3 in the state of Maine, which is very consistent with other recognitions that have been done by various organizations that we've looked at. So once again, we're up there. Falmouth was first, Yarmouth second, and Greeley was, MSAD 51 was number 3. Cape Elizabeth was 4. So just to give you that information, we're always very happy to get that. I'd like to congratulate the Greeley Middle School Jazz Band. They went to the Maine State Jazz Festival in Millinocket. The students did a great job. Nathan Howell received an Outstanding Musician Award for his drumming. And drumming, as I have found out, is a very difficult skill. It is not easy. I gave it a whirl and it was not easy. National Honor Society, some of this news is old because we had a vacation, but I just want to let you know that we had 50 students who were recognized and inducted into the National Honor Society. It's really great to see that. We have so many students who are deserving in our high school, and I'd like to thank our advisors, Vanessa Gribben and Emily Banks. They really do yeoman's work in facilitating. It's more than 50 students who are in NHS if you count the students who are in from the previous year. So they do a great job organizing that program for us and doing a great job with the ceremony. And the students run the ceremony. They really do a wonderful job with that. District-wide band and chorus concerts, that's always 2 of my favorite concerts of the year that I love going to. And we have for the band 5th through 12th grade, and the chorus is 4th through 12th grade. And those were packed houses both nights, and they've been very popular. And we really, I particularly appreciate when all the students go up there and perform together at the end for the last song or the last instrumental. And it's really wonderful to see that, the younger students and then the older students together. The math team has really been on a roll this year at the high school. They're 7th in the state right now. Greg Pershing is 3rd in the state. Madison Albert is 3rd in the state for freshmen. And they have also done very well in the Pinecone South Division. They placed second, which is the Southern Division of the state. And we had a lot of students who placed as well in that particular category. And then at the state meet, they were third in the B division for the state meet. Greg Pershing again came in second place overall. Peter Theodoros came in 17th place, and Madison Albert came in 4th at the main state math meet. And then several students we also had invited to the American Regions Mathematic League annual competition for the nation's finest math students. Wow. Again, Greg Pershing, Peter Theodoros, and Madison Albert. Those 3 students have been invited. I can't even imagine being invited to that. A plus B equals C, I think. But it's really quite an honor for them. And then the team was invited to the New England Association of Math Leagues, which is a nice honor as well, to have the entire team invited to that. So very proud of our math team at the high school. The Special Olympics went to the swim meet. We had 22 Greeley students who competed in the Cumberland County Special Olympics meet on the 6th at Cape Elizabeth. Charlie Safian, who's at the high school, placed first in the 25 butterfly and third in the 50 freestyle at the Special Olympics state meet.
Wow,
he went on to the state meet, so it was really very exciting to see that. And we've gotten a couple of students who have received national awards. 2 students who have received national awards from the American Association of Teachers of Spanish and Portuguese. We had sophomore Kara Freed, who was one of 15 students who was awarded the Global Citizens Scholarship. And that's a 2-week Spanish immersion program. And that will be in Minnesota. And junior Stephanie Tillertson was one of 24 students awarded the Junior Study Abroad Scholarship, which is an all-expense paid trip to Spain. Sounds really exciting for both those students, and congratulations to them. And then I know you probably want my superintendent's report to be over, but guess what?
No, I know, that's all
I
good
get to
stuff.
show you the strategic priorities.
I was going to say, that's the part that I like the good, I mean, it's all good.
Speaker's prerogative.
Speaker's prerogative.
So Mr. Desmond can jump in at any point and help out. This is and look, I'm going to show you right now 10 slides. Okay. And one is not really a slide, so it will be short. This is strategic priorities. I think it's important to at least give you an update. Let me put that on presentation mode for you. Give you an update as to what the strategic planning committee and then the joint workshop that the board had with the administrators back in March. There's been work that's been continuous in taking all that information from that workshop, from the strategic planning committee and their meetings, and kind of putting this all together. So as you know, these are the 4 goals that we currently have in our plan that's expiring in June. This is the process that we've used, and right now we're at phase 3, creating the plan. After all the voices have been gathered, you'll have a chance to weigh in on that. You have had a chance to weigh in on that, and then phase 4 is when the board approves the plan, which we're hoping the board gets the plan for approval on June 4th, and then actually approves it at the next meeting in June. So presentation on June 4th, and then whatever that next meeting is would be the board's approval date. So there's 3 things that the strategic planning committee looked at when we were thinking about where is this plan going to go. The first one was, what is the continuity between the current plan and the plan that is being developed? So what is the bridge of the areas that can be bridged? What conditions are changing? The school is the facilities, obviously the state capital is state laws, technology, data, 21st century skills, which is the globe. There's a lot of conditions that we have to pay attention to around us. And then some new ideas. Obviously, we want our new plan to have new ideas in it. and not just carrying over things that we're currently working on, but what are some kind of new sparks that we'd like to put in there. So these strategic priorities were gathered by looking at these 3 data points, looking at first the current plan and what things need to be carried over. Secondly was the community dialogue event, which was held in November. And third was the stakeholder surveys that were completed by a lot of people. I don't have the numbers in front of me right now, but I don't know if anyone remembers how many people, but it was a lot that completed those surveys. So we're very happy to have as much interest in providing us feedback. And then these were the areas that we looked at in balancing what should be the large strategic priorities of the district in the next 3 years, looking at the alignment to the mission statement, whether it's essential or optional, a commitment versus compliance. If it's commitment, obviously we want to be looking at that more than just complying with things, but there are things that we need to comply with that are state requirements or federal requirements. Available versus scarce resources. We have limited resources in some areas of our district, such as facilities right now. Refinement versus new priorities. Is this just a priority that needs a little bit more work, or is it brand new? And then the scale of it. You know, what is our capacity to actually carry these things out? So with those things in mind, ta-da! This probably looks a little different than it has. It's gone through multiple iterations, but it's basically the same content as it was 2 months ago at your joint workshop with the administrators. But there's 4 major categories that kept coming up over and over and over again from all the input that was received. And these 4 areas, really starting at the bottom, with the wellness, if you think of the strategic priorities as a house, so in the house, the foundation is absolutely essential before anything else is going to happen. If you don't have the foundation, nothing else happens. So wellness. And I can't tell you, reading every single comment, every survey result, that was absolutely number 1. And I think a lot of it is that wellness is in our current plan, but that plan is being developed still. And it will be presented to you actually at your next board meeting. You'll get the wellness plan as a first draft. The Wellness Committee has been working on that for over 1 year. So that plan is just about done now. So that will be the foundation. You know, this is a proposal to the board. The board has to approve this. Foundation for the next plan. On top of that is the early childhood education, and that is encompassing a lot of different things, including 3- and 4-year-olds, which we today have no idea what that means in terms of mandate. Doesn't mean that we don't have ideas about the direction of the district, but we also know that the legislature has yet to act on that, except to say that they're going to study it at this point as a stakeholder study and put together a proposal that the legislature will vote on, hopefully. It also encompasses our facilities. Elementary education is where we are right now bursting at the seams and will be projected to do so for the next 10 years. And so we have to get out in front of that and be serious about how are we going to handle that. And so looking at our early childhood education right up through 5th grade, so it's elementary, all of our elementary grades. And then going up in the house even more, once those 2 pieces of the foundation are settled, is college and career ready. And that's kind of the meat and potatoes of the house. That's where you do a lot of your living in your house, is a lot of sleeping, a lot of hours up there. Well, that's where we plan to spend a lot of time in our plan, is around, you know, what standards are kids meeting? How do we know they're meeting those standards? What are we doing when they aren't? RTI, proficiency, et cetera. And making sure kids are grounded in the skills they need to go ahead. And then on top is the 21st century skills. And that's think of that as your creativity in the attic, your innovation, the kind of the unfinished, uncharted territory of your strategic plan. Kind of the window to the outside, and just kind of let that wall stay open. If it's like my attic, the wind blows through. So that's the creative part, and we got a good sense of that from people as they weighed in. So this is a little more detail. I won't go through all these, but a lot of what I just said in the previous slide you'll see here is, again, the foundation for the wellness, for the foundation for teaching and learning, early childhood education, recognizing that's the critical building block for us as a organization. Every student college and career ready, making sure that we don't graduate students that don't have the skills to be successful. not only in college, but also in career. And skills for the 21st century, skills for life, and that's the creativity and the innovation, making meaning relevant and meaningful. And that kids love learning, and that's what we want. And so those were really the four huge overarching ideas. I wouldn't think of these as replacing the four goals that we had, because that's not the intent. These are kind of is it Star Trek New Generation? Yes.
Mm-hmm.
Star Trek New Generation, Strategic Plan New Generation. That's what we're going to say. I don't know why that came to mind. So, and the last slide I have for you is the ideas that and this came out of some brainstorming sessions, and actually, I think Kevin might have been the brainchild for this one, I can't remember, in a planning session that we had around design tools and looking at our strategic plan in terms of views or vantage points that we're pulling these areas out. So instead of separating out investment in our team, which we've done for the current plan, and parent and community partnerships, which we've done with the current plan, those should be embedded in everything we do. They shouldn't be a separate goal. They should be in everything, in every priority. And, you know, in the strategic planning committee, when they met, we're also talking about, well, okay, that's great, but where's student voice and engagement?
Mm-hmm.
That should be in everything we do. Where's leadership? Leadership is kind of the gel that makes all this plan work. That should be somehow defined. And then facilities and operations, that vantage point as well, because that's critical for our district right now, is looking at how our facilities are going to work for our students for the next decades, several decades, as we're at a crossroads right now. So those are areas, and again, this is where we're at today. We have 2 months until the board, or I guess not quite 2 months, before the board will get the whole plan. But wanted to give you that very quick view. And I'm looking at my chair of the Strategic Plan Committee, our chair, and wanted to see if you wanted to add something.
How could I miss that opportunity, Jeff?
Huh?
You know, I started scribbling furiously. I'm so glad you're here. I started scribbling furiously when we were finishing up the budget discussion, because when the thing that you've done so effectively is by introducing strategy at a deeper level into everything that we do and everything that we spend, and our role as efficiently using taxpayer money to provide a great learning experience. When we talk about it, it's one thing, and I mean, we can pat ourselves on the back and say we're doing the right thing. But then you have somebody like Mark Bay come in and talk about impact on people's lives, and it kept jumping out at me that he's connecting people to their future a lot earlier than what they can do in different communities. When we talk about strategy, or we talk about this plan, I think one of the things that people may think is strategic planning costs more money, and this is another way that we ask for more money to do more things, but that's not the case. It's the effective way that you and your team continue to prioritize where you want to go, and by aligning each of those different groups within that, so it doesn't become disparate efforts to say we're doing something and then we'll develop our staff over here. By pulling them in, it's removing a lot of those questions that the community may have, and I think that your insight on this has been very compelling.
Actually, I give that one to you, Kevin, because you're the one that helped us with that one. Sorry.
Well, whatever happened, Jeff. But
whatever happened in that meeting.
So our opportunity as we continue to work on this is to talk about the value that this is bringing to every student every day.
Right. Yes.
Every member of the community every day, as we were watching the folks that came in, and every one of our leadership and educators in here. So, you know, when there's no value in something, that's when price becomes the only discussion. There's a lot of value. And bringing in Mark and bringing in the students and everybody else today, I think I like where you're leading this, Jeff. So those were my only thoughts.
I think the Strategic Planning Committee has done a lot of heavy lifting this year. So I'd like to do that. And I also like to give credit where it's due. The House, we were in a brainstorming session. I think Kevin was in that meeting as well. And Sally Laughlin just, you know, brilliantly just said, well, what about a house? I thought, oh my gosh, that is exactly what we're trying to do. Build a house. Remodel a house, not build, remodel.
Well, thank you for all this. I mean, I know it's been quite the project, and we really appreciate your leadership on it, and just being able to get all of the information from the various groups, and then, it's really coming together, and we're very excited to vote on it in June, and thank you for everything on this.
We're also just introducing it, so if there's any major concerns or questions, please let Kevin or myself know, and just we can go from there.
Great.
Very appreciate it.
Okay, thank you. Any other comments or questions on this? All right. So let's go ahead then. I don't think there's any additional public comment. Why don't we just go to committee reports? Karen?
Finance will not be meeting until next Tuesday, May 1st.
So we don't meet tomorrow?
We do not
You had
meet
said that.
tomorrow.
Okay, that's what I
Tuesday, May
thought.
1st.
I was wondering about that. Okay, so that's May 1st on Tuesday. All right, anything else? Okay, policy?
We just have one policy for first read, expulsion hearing and reentry guidelines. We've revised some language around who the hearing officer could be, should be, and hopefully this will go for vote next meeting for our approval.
Okay, great. Please take a look at this. If you have any questions or comments, as always, filter them through Kate. And Kate, thanks very much for bringing that forward. Curriculum, any report?
We met on the 11th, and we really talked about, thanks. Really what the goals are, continue to talk about what the goals are for the committee and how we can really communicate as board members what the curriculum looks like. We have not set up a meeting for next, but I'm sure we will very soon.
Okay, great. Negotiations, I know you guys have been.
Sure.
Yep.
Yeah, we've have good news. We've reached a tentative agreement in our negotiations with the bus drivers, and we'll be discussing that on May 7th in executive session. Had an excellent team with Mike and Kate and Joan and Pam and Basil and Lisa. We had a couple of what I would say late evenings, not too late, but we've reached what we think is a fair agreement, and we'll be discussing that on May 7th, so thank you.
Thanks to everyone for that effort. I was not able to attend those meetings, but I really appreciate it. I know how hard the negotiations can be, just in terms of even the hours, just also just the sheer sort of intensity of it with, that you have to stick through it and the whole process. So we really appreciate everyone's time and effort on that. And we look forward to taking a look at it in the next couple of weeks. Facilities?
Facilities, since we last had a board meeting on March 26th, we were able to tour the Performing Arts Center back on April 2nd. We've been meeting in workshops since, and it was just an amazing experience. It's really starting to take shape, and when you actually step inside the facility, you get a sense of just how wonderful it's going to be. And in the 21 days that have gone by since that tour, it's changed significantly again. In fact, even tonight, I noticed that there's windows starting to be installed.
Yep.
So it's a very cool thing. But coming up on May 7th at 9 a.m. will be another big milestone event for the Facilities Committee. We will be meeting with Steve Blatt to review a preliminary report on the space study. Or actually, I guess it would be the final report at this point. We last met with Steve in January, and were provided some initial findings, ideas, and suggestions. May 7th, we'll sort of
Great. We're
provide
really
guidance.
looking forward to that. So thank you for your work on that. And also, I went on the tour. I think so. It's really quite something. It's just very exciting. And thanks very much to Scott and Jeff. I know you guys have been working with the construction team very closely, and we really appreciate your stewardship on that.
I just want to add, if there's any board members that would like to take a tour of the Performing Arts Center, we can certainly arrange that. I would like to offer that out.
You might not be able to get rid of me. I might go for a second whirl. Okay, strategic planning. Anything additional?
Nothing more, except we have moved a date, and I don't know what the new date is, but we're endeavoring to get one.
I think we're still working on it.
I blame myself.
I think Fran's working on it.
We will eagerly await that. And then environmental stewardship?
We met on the 9th. We are trying to put together some plans for Outdoor Classroom Week in the middle of
Nice.
May. Jeff was supportive of that idea, and we've already reached out to hopefully find a teacher at each school to kind of spearhead that. We are also have a great response from the Maine Agriculture in Classrooms grant that we sent out to all of the staff, and we have 17 people that are interested in partaking in pushing that grant forward, which is awesome. And then we realized that we need to get some more compost bins for the high school. We only have 2, we need 3, and we got to figure out how to raise the funds to build them, and hopefully that will make things a little smoother and less smelly.
Good. Thank you very much.
We have
for
not set
that.
a meeting for the next, but it will be soon.
So students have very appropriately excused themselves from this meeting, so we will obviously pass on that. I don't think we have any additional communications for tonight, so let's go ahead. We have one item for action, which is the vote to authorize the superintendent to execute an agreement on appropriate bargaining unit for school social workers. This is something that we had talked about, and the recommended vote is to authorize the superintendent to execute an agreement on appropriate bargaining unit for school social workers. Is there a motion for that?
I move to authorize the superintendent to execute an agreement on appropriate bargaining unit for school social workers.
Is there a second?
I'll second.
Is there discussion?
Was this Vicky?
Are the nurses in this, going to be in this? Is this just social workers, or do
Just
nurses have
social
their own?
workers.
Are they with the teachers, or they're not?
They're already in.
Okay.
The teachers.
The nurses or the social workers?
The nurses are already in.
Okay, that's what was my
Yeah.
question.
Any other questions? Okay.
Yeah, well,
Do you want the next one?
no, I'm okay.
No, you can go ahead.
Were there, so when we had the last discussion on this, so were there additional discussions with them before, as they decided to move forward with this?
No, really the process for recognizing is completely up to the board on this end of things,
Okay.
whether or not you agree to recognize them. So there's been no additional discussions until the board recognizes. Now, the process from here is if the board tonight votes to recognize social workers, then we would open negotiations with the social workers as to what the contractual piece would look like.
So the
But we
group-
can't do that until the board recognizes.
And so the group is most assuredly interested in being recognized by,
Yes, we have been given, yes, very much so.
okay, that's all, I'm sorry, I
Yes.
struggled with
I
the
hear what
words.
you're
No, I know,
saying.
because it's
That
been,
I-
it was, yeah.
So
Thank you.
once they're recognized, do they join another existing group?
I think that's open for negotiation. So once you recognize, then we begin the process of figuring out what does this mean in terms of bargaining. Then it all has to be collectively bargained. So it could be an existing bargaining unit, it could be a separate one completely. There are different options. And all that is part of that process that we would go into.
But once you recognize them, does that mean they're going to be?
Once you recognize, you're saying, yes, they have the right to, collectively bargain, which under the law they do. And they've asked for it, and the board is basically saying, we agree, and we're gonna provide this opportunity for you to collectively bargain with the board.
They still have to choose a representing, or who's going to represent them and so forth. The social workers have to vote on that.
Right.
So,
Isn't this essentially what we agreed to last time we discussed this, just in a formal manner?
Yes.
Okay. That's what I thought.
Do you have any other questions?
Yeah, it requires a public vote.
Gotcha.
Yep.
Everyone else, any other discussion on this? Okay. All in favor? Anyone opposed? Okay, thank you. Next, a motion to adjourn.
I move that we adjourn.
Second? All in favor? We are adjourned. Okay, thank you very much.